Okay, and now let's take a look at you. What helpful rituals did you develop this year? I know at the beginning of the year, if you attended the Focused Investor Part 1 for 2020, I asked you what helpful rituals you could put in place, things that would help you be more healthy or wealthy or wiser or happier. So, what about you? This past year, what helpful rituals did you develop over this past year? I know for me, my big commitment at the beginning of 2020 was to meditate every morning for at least 10 minutes. I knew if I did the same thing for piano the year before. I said, if I can just sit down and just commit to 10 minutes a day, 5 days a week, I know that sometimes that 10 minutes turns into 15, 20, 25, 30 minutes. So I made the same commitment around meditation this year because meditation is scientifically proven. It reduces stress, it reduces anxiety, it improves our focus, it increases our happiness, it even improves our physical health. So it does take practice though, so it takes patience, it takes practice. So it's just like exercise. It takes more than just 20 sit-ups or running a mile to get results, but the longer you stick with it, the easier it becomes and the more benefits you notice. So for me, I just made that commitment of 10 minutes every morning of doing meditation. I use the app called Calm, the Calm app, and that really helped me get started. And so anyway, just that's what worked for me. I just wanted to share that and think about for you, what helpful rituals did you develop over this past year? How'd you do with that? Which ones worked, which ones didn't? And then what habits did you shed this year? What bad habits, really? So, what are the bad habits that maybe you came into the beginning of the year that you said, you know what? This is the year I stop this. So, oh, this the little boy picking his nose just cracks me up. But so, what about you? So, what was a habit that you shed this past year? What's a habit, a bad habit that you broke that you are no longer doing, or you're doing it a lot less often? And go ahead and write that down. And even write down the habit that I got rid of or the bad habit that I shed this past year was, so you know what that means when you look back at this form. Okay, so whatever that habit was, congratulations. Awesome. Nice work. That's huge. You got better. Now let's go big picture and look at the theme for the year. So looking back at the amazing year 2020, what was the theme for your year? So I always ask at the beginning of the year, what's the theme? What do you want the theme to be? So maybe you set that back at the beginning of 2020 in January, and you said, my theme for this year is going to be whatever. Maybe it changed. Maybe with what happened in our world, it was a different theme. But for you, what was the theme of your 2020? And write that down. Another way to look at this, as I've said before, it's like if they were going to write a book about your life in the year 2020, or make a movie about your life in the year 2020, what might the title be? So this is kind of cool when you look back on this in the future and a few years from now or many years from now, you look back and say, 2020, that was the year of the coronavirus and all that. However, for me, the theme was this. Okay, and yes, there have been some challenges this year that affected just about everyone. So let's take a look at dealing with challenges like this poor little boy failure. Sometimes you just don't have an excuse. Sometimes, like I said, there's things outside of our control that there's nothing we can do about, but there's things that we can control, that internal locus of control that we can do something about. So let's talk about dealing with challenges. Mistakes, one way to look at that is a mistake. They say take one, they try it, they go to shoot the scene. Oh, take two, take three. So sometimes you can look at it as just a mistake. So as Niels Bohr said, and he got the Nobel Prize in Physics back in 1922, he said an expert is someone who has made all of the mistakes which can be made in a narrow field. So if you made some mistakes in real estate investing, it means that you are becoming more of an expert, making those mistakes, getting them out of the way. But where else? Where else did you make some mistakes? What were your biggest challenges this past year? So let's take a look at that. Maybe they weren't your mistakes. Maybe they're just mistakes that just happened outside of your control. But what were the biggest challenges that you experienced in this past year? Bring that to mind. What were your biggest challenges, failures, losses? Go ahead and write those down. Hopefully it's not too many. I'm hoping for you. But there is a benefit of looking back at those challenges and bringing them up. Sometimes it doesn't feel that great. You're like, oh, I wanted to forget about that, Rich. But sometimes it's important to take a look at. Why? Because then you can look at what did you learn? What did you learn from those challenges? Did they make you stronger? They make you better? Did you get more clarity? Did you become more of an expert? So go ahead. When you look at the challenges that you just wrote down that you experienced in the year 2020, what did you learn from each of those challenges? Write down the lesson. And this also gives clues to what you can do differently next. So it's almost like sometimes when I'm meeting with my coach and I have a mess up over the week and something didn't go well, and I said, man, this was a challenge or this was a loss this week. And he's like, oh, okay, got it. So if you could go back and relive this past week, what could have you done differently? And I can get some learning from that. Sometimes it's like nothing. There's nothing I could have done. This just happened. But often I'll look back and say, you know what? I wish I had done this differently. I could have done this. Could have done more research, more due diligence. I could have learned more. I could have reached out, whatever. All right, so you've got your challenges from the year. You've got what you learned from those challenges. And hopefully you've got some quick notes there on what you can do differently in 2021 and beyond. What did you learn? So again, this is us getting better, learning from the past, and carrying that forward. It's the bottom line. I love this one. Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. So this is it. So a lot of times we win, we go for it, we get the good win. Sometimes we don't, but we always learn. It's especially if you look back on it and say, what can I do differently next year? All right, so let's continue to look back here at this past year. What about the personal quality that you most developed in this past year? So how did you grow? How did you grow? What personal quality did you most develop in 2020? And I've got some examples there. Might be courage. Maybe it's authenticity, being more authentic. Maybe you strengthened your integrity. You made a commitment to that. Maybe you became a more kind person, more empathetic. Maybe you increased your boldness, your personal boldness, speaking the bold truth or whatever it is for you. Maybe you improved your self-discipline by doing something consistently over and over, really upping that self-discipline. Again, that's neuroplasticity. You get those neurons firing together, this scientific proof that if you do something that's challenging and you do it consistently, anything that takes self-discipline, you actually become a more self-disciplined person. Maybe it's grace under pressure. Maybe you developed your humor. So what about you? What's the personal quality that you most developed in 2020? Write that down, please. Good for you. And at the beginning of the year, I had asked you, what is the personal quality that you want to develop? And what was the plan? It's that one personal quality, like the courage, authenticity, integrity, kindness, whatever it might be, choosing one of those or something different to really put a focus on. And then I'm going to ask you that in the beginning of January. And for 2021, what are you going to focus on developing? What personal quality are you most going to develop? So maybe you were at the Focus Investor at the beginning of the year, maybe not, but looking back, what actually happened? What personal quality did you most develop? Now, there's something that we use at RealWealth. We do this every year with our whole team. We take a look back. It's a business acronym, I guess, if you will. It's a business process, but it works incredibly well personally as well to become a more focused investor, to become a better person, better human, to grow. So the simple 4-step process for determining your strengths, your abilities, and also your next steps moving forward is called SWOT. So you may have heard of this, maybe not. It stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So let's take a little time here to take a look at you incorporated, you as a focus investor, and you as a human being. So when you think about your greatest strengths, what comes to mind? And write those down. Might want to just write SWOT right on your piece of paper there and under strengths. My strengths are. So when you really think about you as a human, as an investor, as a parent, as a business person, whatever it might be for you, what are your greatest strengths? What stands out to you? Okay, you probably got a whole bunch of things to write down there, so you can always come back to this and write more, I hope. So let's go to the W, the weaknesses. So what are your weaknesses and or underdeveloped qualities, underdeveloped strengths? You know, sometimes it's important to get clear on what your weaknesses are, because one, you can really look at the who, not how. It's like, instead of how can I do this, you can really take a look at who can do this instead of me. But sometimes it's just good. Take a look at your weaknesses and see where you might want to grow and improve something and develop that weakness, or to find someone else who can help you with that weakness. So go ahead and write down what weaknesses do you have? Where do you need to strengthen, or where do you just feel like you're weak, you're not good at something, which is totally fine. Go ahead and write those weaknesses down. And like I said, we do the same process at RealWealth with our whole team. We get our 27 employees together and we talk about the company. We talk about RealWealth. What are our greatest strengths? What are our weaknesses at RealWealth? How can we become better? And then let's take a look at opportunities. We do the same thing with the company. I want you to do that for you. What opportunities do you see ahead of you? What are the opportunities that you could take action on to improve, to get better, to create real wealth, to create financial freedom, to become a better person, to get in better shape, to be happier? What opportunities do you see ahead? Go ahead and write those down. Okay, nice work. And again, you can continue on with this. Just keep brainstorming those opportunities and what's to come, because that's going to help you set more effective goals and plans and intentions for 2021. And then we move to the T, the threats. So what threats are you experiencing? You know, and this could, like in a company, it's like, it could be so many things. And for the individual too, especially as an investor, sometimes the threat might be the economy. Some threats might be around taxes. Some threats could be around something at work. Whatever it is for you, what potential threats do you need to be aware of? So again, we're not going through life with blinders on, eyes wide open, being very aware of what's coming, what might be coming. And I know a lot of those threats sometimes are just made up in our own mind. It's fear. It's our fear going, hey, you got to pay attention to this. I'm scared. But you have to check in and say, okay, fear, what do you need right now? What do you need? All right, so you've got your SWOT analysis, as they call it in business, your SWOT analysis. You've got your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Again, you could come back to this later. When we do this with our team at RealWealth, when I do it personally, I usually invest. We probably put hour and a half to 2 hours just focused on this. And you know, we have lists and these big Post-it notes all over the room that lists all of our strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats. And from that, you can say, okay, well, if these are opportunities, what goals am I going to set? And if these are our threats or my threats coming up, what do I need to do about that? What do I need to be aware of? So nice work on that. You got your SWOT analysis.